Fixing a truck for some strange farmer for free. Your own house is still leaking. The neighbor scoffed when he saw Luke repairing the vehicle on the roadside. He just shrugged, continuing to tighten the bolt while his young child sat waiting nearby, holding a sippy cup. The next morning, when three black SUVs stopped in front of his house, that mocking neighbor stood frozen behind his window. Who was that farmer, and what made an entire response team react as if they had just found a hero? Welcome to QH. Let's uncover what really happened. Luke Harris, 34, was a single father living on the outskirts of Georgia. He had been a heavy-duty truck technician in the military, but was discharged after his wife died of cancer to raise their child alone. Currently, Luke made a living repairing machinery for hire and driving delivery trucks, an unstable income, but he always managed to keep a smile on his face for his son Noah, who was just 4 years old. Luke's life had changed dramatically 5 years ago. Back then, he had been Staff Sergeant Harris, an expert in vehicle maintenance with the 3rd Infantry Division. His wife Rachel had been a high school math teacher, beloved by her students in the community. They had been high school sweethearts who married young, postponed having children until they felt secure, and then welcomed Noah into their carefully planned life. When Rachel first complained of constant fatigue, they dismissed it as a natural exhaustion of a new mother. By the time doctors found the aggressive cancer spreading through her body, it was already stage 4. She fought bravely for 11 months, but Luke knew from the moment of diagnosis that he would soon be raising their son alone. The military had been understaffed. Luke's commanding officer had arranged compassionate reassignments and flexible schedules during Rachel's treatment, but after her funeral, Luke realized he couldn't balance the demands of military service with being the father Noah needed. His honorable discharge had been granted quickly, with commendations for his decade of exemplary service. Civilian life had proven more challenging than expected. Without a bachelor's degree, Luke found his extensive mechanical skills undervalued in the formal job market. Companies wanted certifications he hadn't needed in the military. The recession had hit rural Georgia hard, and full-time positions with benefits were scarce. So Luke had pieced together a living however he could, fixing farm equipment, picking up delivery runs for the local hardware store, and occasionally helping at his friend's auto shop when they were overwhelmed. It was enough to keep a roof over their heads and food on the table, but just barely. That day, while driving his son home after finishing a delivery job for Henderson's Hardware, Luke spotted an old truck parked on the roadside. The owner, an elderly man wearing a mud-stained jacket, was fumbling under the hood. Luke pulled over. Without hesitation, he said, "I have a toolkit in my trunk. Maybe I can help." The man just nodded slightly. No name given, no complaints, just silently watching Luke work as if evaluating him. As Luke assessed the truck's problems, a combination of corroded battery terminals and a timing issue, he could feel the man's gaze. It wasn't impatient or anxious like most stranded motorists. It was calm, observant, almost analytical. A while later, Luke's neighbor, Mr. Henderson, walked by, chuckling sarcastically. "Instead of fixing your leaky pipes at home, you're working for free for that country bumpkin." Luke didn't answer. Henderson had never forgiven Luke for buying the house. Henderson's nephew had won. The fact that Luke struggled to maintain it seemed to give Henderson personal satisfaction. Noah sat quietly in the car, looking at his father as if he were Superman. That look, the pure admiration in his son's eyes, was worth more than any payment Luke could have asked for. It took nearly 40 minutes before Luke got the truck running again. The engine caught with a rumble that settled into a smooth idle. The old man said only one thing: "You didn't ask my name, but I won't forget yours." If you've ever chosen to help someone, not because of who they were but simply because it was the right thing to do, stay with us. That night, Luke came home late. While washing his hands, Noah asked, "Dad, did you know who that man was?" Luke patted his son's head. "No need to know, just need to know he needed help." It was a philosophy Luke had lived by since his earliest days in the military. His first sergeant had drilled it into the young recruits. You help your battle buddies because they need help, not because of their rank or where they're from. That lesson had stayed with Luke long after he'd left the service. After tucking Noah into bed, Luke sat at his small kitchen table, reviewing bills by the dim light above the sink. The electricity was past due, and the property taxes were coming up. The roof leak was getting worse, and the Georgia summer storms wouldn't wait for his finances to improve. He considered calling his parents in Ohio for a loan, but pride stopped him. They had already helped with Rachel's funeral expenses, and at 34, Luke felt he should be able to stand on his own. He eventually fell asleep on the couch, lulled by the sound of crickets through the screen door, and the occasional distant rumble of traffic on the highway. The next morning, as Luke was feeding his son breakfast, the sound of car horns blared persistently outside. "Daddy," Someone's here, Noah said, looking up from his cereal bowl, milk dribbling down his chin. Luke wiped his son's face automatically as he moved to the window. Then he froze. He stepped out onto the small front porch, stunned. 3 polished black SUVs were parked in a line in front of the yard, plainclothes soldiers emerging. Luke recognized the bearing immediately. Military personnel in civilian clothes. Their posture and alertness couldn't be disguised by the absence of uniforms. One approached, showing his credentials. Lieutenant Colonel Ramsey, sir, we're from the high-ranking Military Personnel Protection Unit. Someone wants to meet you. Luke's mind raced through possibilities. Had there been an issue with his discharge papers? Was there a problem with his modest veterans' benefits? Or maybe this was about the custody arrangement for Noah. Though Rachel's parents had long since accepted Luke's role as primary guardian, the person stepped out from the back seat of the central vehicle, a tall, distinguished man with silver-gray hair and the unmistakable bearing of senior command. Luke recognized him instantly. Retired General Marcus Dalton, former commander of operations in Afghanistan, and more recently, a special advisor to the Joint Chiefs of Staff. He wasn't wearing a uniform, but his gaze made Luke stand straight with old military reflexes. Some habits never faded, and respect for the chain of command had been ingrained in Luke since basic training. Noah smiled slightly, saying at ease, Harris, I've retired, but what you did yesterday wasn't simply fixing a truck. Luke remained respectfully silent, waiting for the explanation. You didn't know who I was, but I know you're one of the rare people who doesn't need to know in order to do the right thing. General Dalton gestured toward Luke's modest home. Mind if we talk inside? What I have to discuss isn't classified, but it is best kept between us for now. Luke nodded, suddenly conscious of his simple t-shirt and worn jeans, of the peeling paint on his porch steps, and the toys scattered across his small lawn. But the general didn't seem to notice or care about these details as he followed Luke inside. Noah was still at the table, wide-eyed at the important visitor. The general smiled warmly at the boy. You must be Noah. Your dad helped me yesterday when my truck broke down. The boy nodded solemnly. Daddy fixes lots of things. I bet he does, Dalton replied, then turned to Luke. Could we speak privately for a moment? Luke asked Noah to go play in his room, promising they wouldn't be long. Once the boy was out of earshot, Dalton's expression became more serious. General Dalton explained, the truck you fixed was mine, but what you didn't know was that inside were confidential files being prepared for Congress, about a fund to help impoverished veterans. He paused, gauging Luke's reaction before continuing. I didn't want bodyguards following me, because I wanted to know what real life was like for soldiers after the war, and you are living proof. Luke's brow furrowed. With all due respect, sir, I'm not sure I understand. For the past year, I've been gathering first-hand accounts of veterans' experiences after service, not the sanitized versions that reach Washington, but the real struggles. I've been traveling incognito, meeting veterans where they live, seeing conditions first. He gestured around Luke's modest home, like this, a decorated veteran struggling to make ends meet despite honorable service and valuable skills. Luke felt a flush of embarrassment, but Dalton raised a hand to stop any objection. It's not a judgment, Harris. It's evidence of a system that's failing the people who served it most faithfully. He handed Luke an envelope. This is an official thank you, but not just with words. Luke was invited to join a nationwide veteran technician project with a salary 3 times his old income, housing assistance and tuition for no. We're establishing a program to harness the technical skills of veterans like yourself, critical infrastructure, maintenance and improvement, power grids, water systems, communications networks, the kind of work that keeps America running, but often goes unnoticed until something breaks. Noah concluded, I once told Congress we need to invest in people like you, not because they're poor but because they still maintain what's right in a society that mocks kindness. Have you ever helped someone and then discovered they weren't ordinary at all? Share your story, because your kindness might have touched someone greater than you realized. Luke didn't believe what was happening. Just yesterday, he was worrying about next month's rent. Today, a retired 4-star general was standing in his modest living room, offering him a chance that sounded too good to be true. I don't understand, sir, Luke said, the envelope still unopened in his hands. You're offering me a job because I fixed your truck. General Dalton took a seat at Luke's kitchen table, gesturing for Luke to join him. The wooden chair creaked slightly under the general's weight, a small reminder of how out of place such an important figure seemed in Luke's humble home. Let me give you some context, Harris, Dalton said, his voice carrying the weight of authority even in retirement. For the past 18 months, I've been heading a congressional task force on veteran support services. The results have been disappointing. He rubbed his temples, a momentary break in his composed exterior. Reports, statistics, expert testimonies, They all tell us what's happening, but not why, so I decided to see for myself. Dalton explained that he had been traveling incognito across 5 states, meeting veterans in their communities, seeing their living conditions firsthand. That broken down truck wasn't an accident. I've been engineering these encounters, leaving my security detail behind, presenting myself as just another struggling veteran or civilian. Luke's expression shifted from confusion to understanding. You were testing people, he said quietly. Observing, Dalton corrected, in 14-stage breakdowns across 3 states. You were the only veteran who stopped without hesitation. Others drove by. Some took money up front. One even recognized me and tried to leverage it for a job recommendation. The general leaned forward. But you didn't even ask my name. You saw someone in need and acted. Then you refused payment. That's exactly the character we need for this program. As Dalton outlined the details, Luke learned that the Veteran Technical Corps was a new pilot initiative, providing specialized training to veterans with mechanical aptitude, then placing them in critical infrastructure positions nationwide. The program offered stability, fair compensation and educational benefits for dependents. We don't just need people who can fix things, Dalton emphasized, we need people who understand why things need fixing in the first place. Luke's mind was racing. The opportunity was beyond anything he'd hoped for, but doubts crept in. Sir, I'm honored, but I'm just a mechanic. I don't have the advanced degrees or certifications that. Dalton cut him off with a wave of his hand. We can provide the training and certification. What we can't teach is character, Harris. You either have it or you don't, and you demonstrated yours without knowing anyone was watching. From his briefcase, Dalton produced a folder containing information about the program, training schedules, compensation details, housing options. As Luke flipped through the pages, the reality of what was being offered began to sink in. This would change everything for Noah and me, he said softly. That's the idea, Dalton replied. Men like you served your country once. Now we're asking you to serve again, but this time with the support and compensation you deserve. Dalton stood, signaling that the meeting was drawing to a close. Take 48 hours to think it over. The first training cohort begins next month in Atlanta. You'd be home on weekends during the 6-month program, and afterward, we'll find you a placement that keeps you close to your son. As the conversation continued, the black SUVs attracted attention in the neighborhood. Through his window, Luke could see Henderson on his front porch, pretending to check his mail while stealing glances at the official vehicles. Other neighbors had found sudden reasons to be outside as well, curiosity overcoming their usual routine. When Dalton finally rose to leave, he handed Luke a business card with a date and address. Next Monday, 800, our Georgia regional office. If you're interested. He paused at the door. And Harris, bring your tools. First day is practical assessment. After the convoy departed, Luke sat with Noah at their small kitchen table, trying to process everything that had happened. Were those men soldiers like you used to be, Dad? Noah asked, climbing onto Luke's lap. Sort of that man who was he. He used to be a very important soldier, a general, the one whose truck you fixed. Luke nodded, impressed by his son's perceptiveness. That's right. Is he your friend now? Luke considered the question. I'm not sure friend is the right word, buddy, but he wants to help us. Are we moving, Dad? Noah asked, his young face showing both excitement and uncertainty. Luke looked around their small rental, the leak stains on the ceiling, the worn furniture, the second-hand toys carefully arranged on the shelf. Maybe, buddy, would that be okay with you? Noah considered the question with the serious deliberation only a 4-year-old can muster. Will you still fix things? Luke smiled, ruffling his son's hair. Yeah, I'll still fix things, just maybe more important things and for better pay. Then it's okay, Noah declared with the simple wisdom of childhood. Later that afternoon, as Luke was changing the oil in his truck, a task that seemed suddenly mundane compared to the morning's events, Mr. Henderson sauntered over, curiosity finally overcoming his pride. Those were government vehicles, he said. Not quite a question. Luke nodded, continuing his work. General Dalton offered me a job. Henderson's expression cycled through disbelief, confusion and grudging respect. Because you fixed his truck. Come on, there's got to be more to it. Luke tightened the oil filter and wiped his hands on a rag. I didn't fix his truck, he said quietly. I fixed a stranger's truck. Turns out who they are doesn't matter nearly as much as what they need. Henderson shifted uncomfortably, clearly remembering his mocking words from the day before. Well, he said finally, good for you, I guess. Luke's decision didn't require the full 48 hours. By evening he had called the number on Dalton's card and confirmed his interest. The regional office sent paperwork electronically, which Luke completed after Noah went to bed. The salary was more than triple what he currently pieced together from his various jobs.
The benefits included full medical coverage, something he hadn't had since leaving the military. The housing allowance would let them move to a safer neighborhood with better school. It felt surreal, like winning a lottery he hadn't even entered. But as he signed the final page of the contract, Luke realized this wasn't about luck. It was about being seen, truly seen for the first time since leaving the service. The following Sunday, Luke packed their modest belongings into his truck, Noah's toys and clothes, his tools, the small box of photos of his late wife. Not much to show for a life, but perhaps that was about to change. Luke never expected that a moment of quiet compassion would ripple so far. Sometimes the road to redemption is paved, not with ambition, but with empathy, with hands that fix what others discard, and eyes that see value where others see burden. He hadn't just repaired a truck, he had rekindled hope in a world that often forgets how vital kindness. Have you ever witnessed someone whose simple kindness was mocked, then rewarded with respect, that changed their life? Share a respect in the comments if you believe such moments reveal true character. Luke declined the invitation to appear on television. He said, "I just fixed a truck, not to be remembered, but because someone once fixed my truck when I was still in uniform." He had been referring to a moment during his deployment when his vehicle had broken down near a remote village. A local mechanic had worked for hours in the blistering heat, refusing payment, saying only that a man who fixes things carries peace in his hands. That simple philosophy had stayed with Luke, shaping his approach to life's challenges. But in the corner of the diner near his new home, there hangs a photograph taken that day. Luke, Noah and the 3 SUVs parked behind them. Below it is the inscription, "One father, one right action, one life lesson for the next generation." The owner of the diner, a Vietnam veteran himself, had requested the photo after hearing the story. He told customers it reminded everyone that characters still mattered in a world increasingly defined by status and wealth. Noah had adapted quickly to their new life. His new school had smaller classes, and more resources for children like him who had lost a parent. His teacher had noted his unusual maturity and his pride when talking about his father's work. When asked by his classmates what his dad did for a living, Noah replied, "My dad makes good people." The simplicity of the answer had made Luke smile when the teacher shared it during a parent-teacher conference. Children often see truth more clearly than adults, unclouded by society's metrics of success. 1 year later, Luke had become an integral part of the veteran technical corps. His practical experience and leadership qualities had earned him a position training new recruits, other veterans looking for purpose and stability after their military service. The program had expanded beyond its initial scope, now partnering with technical colleges to provide certification pathways and establishing apprenticeship programs in communities with high veteran populations. Luke still kept the photograph from Dalton on his desk. Next to it now stood a newer one, Noah on his first day of kindergarten, standing proudly in front of their new home. No leaky roof, no uncertain future, just stability and possibility. Sometimes on weekends, Luke would drive Noah back to their old neighborhood, not out of nostalgia, but to remind them both of the journey they'd taken. They would stop at Mrs. Keller's house, bringing her groceries or helping with yard work. Even Henderson received occasional visits, though the conversations remained brief and somewhat awkward. "Why do we help Mr. Henderson when he was mean to you?" Noah once asked after they had fixed the older man's broken water heater. Luke had considered the question carefully before answering, "Because helping others isn't about whether they deserve it, buddy, it's about who we choose to be." When featured in the Corps' quarterly newsletter, Luke was asked what he considered the most important tool in his extensive collection. "Perspective," he answered without hesitation. "Understanding that what looks like an inconvenience might actually be an opportunity. That stranger on the roadside might be carrying the answer to a prayer you haven't even spoken yet." The article had circulated widely within veteran communities, inspiring others to apply to the program. Luke received emails from former service members who recognized themselves in his story, skilled people struggling to translate their military experience into civilian success. General Dalton, now serving as a special advisor to the President on Veteran Affairs, occasionally cited Luke's story when advocating for expanded funding. "We measure military readiness in billions of dollars of equipment," he once testified before Congress, "but the true security of this nation rests in the hearts of individuals like Luke Harris, people who do what's right because it's right, not because there's something in it for them." The technical core model proved so successful that similar programs were established for other specialized skills: healthcare, education, emergency management, all built around the core principle of character-first selection. Henderson, Luke's former neighbor, sent a Christmas card that first year. The message inside was brief but sincere. "You showed me I was looking at the world all wrong. Thank you for that lesson." Luke kept it, not out of pride, but as a reminder that change was always possible. On quiet evenings after Noah was in bed, Luke sometimes sat on the porch of their new home, thinking about the strange sequence of events that had transformed their lives. The broken down truck, the general in disguise, the opportunity that came not from asking but from giving. He wondered how many other turning points disguised as inconveniences people drove past every day, never knowing what might have been, if they just pulled over and offered to help. Have you ever witnessed someone being mocked for helping others, then having that kindness returned with a life-changing opportunity? Comment about an act of kindness you've seen because someone might need to renew their faith in humanity. Subscribe to QH Incredible Stories, where ordinary people are told as the extraordinary stories they are.